Steve Austin.
Chapter 19. Aftermath. Parthas looked around the strange room he had awakened in, trying to piece together what had happened. Glancing around, he soon realized he was in a healer's ward. But how did he get there? As the cobwebs in his head began to clear, he started to remember bits and pieces of the events leading up to his awakening. He thought to himself,
the maidens had escaped. Hopefully they had made their way to Prentice and were safe there. I fear the maid itself has burned down, as the last thing I remember is ogres setting it aflame. But where was Szeth? If he has not been killed, then why isn't he here? Perhaps he had escaped. I hope so, but last I remember we were surrounded and at our last gasp. It didn't look encouraging. But someone brought me here. If not Szeth, then who?
Parthas reached up to scratch his nose, but his nose never got scratched.
Why can't I move? Hail the inherent, I must have been darted. Shit. I don't remember.
His thoughts were interrupted as a very handsome elf appeared standing over him, smiling sympathetically.
Good afternoon, Parthas. I am glad to see you are conscious. I am Martis, chief of healers here at the Palace of Boniscus. You were darted during the first battle of the Witch War and brought here by Solitarian sprites. I regret to tell you that you were hit with a yellow feathered dart and at the moment are incapable of moving. But we have a witch here, a refugee who has denounced the Order of Panatesis, named Kyrena, who will be up shortly to administer any counterspells she may have, and the one foretold should be back home soon.
The one foretold?
Yes, the daughter of Lord Oddicum and Lady Renata, and the most powerful mage walking Erosian soil. Shania is the fulfillment of the old Ganarinese prophecies from the Lauritanis. If your condition can be reversed, Shania will likely be the one capable of doing so. So, take heart good, Parthas. I can make no guarantees, but I can assure you that you are in the place in Aeros where you stand the best chance of being restored.
Martis went on to fill in the holes in Parthas's recollections concerning the battle at the Maid, and give him the news the messenger corps had brought from up north.
Blessings inherent. My heart is greatly comforted to know my maidens are safe at my nephew's inn in Prentice.
I'm sure it is. The Prentarian archer who dispatched the sprites which brought you here told of how gallantly you stood against the horde to protect your maidens. Obviously you care for them very much.
Yes, very much. Szeth lives? That too is comforting to my heart. He and his archers are courageous, honorable men. They fought to protect the maid as if it belonged to them. It grieves me that all but Szeth lost their lives, and the Solitarians. I owe them a huge debt of gratitude as well.
As do we all. Their selfless contribution in this early stage of the war helped stem the tide.
As Martis finished that sentence, the large wooden door of the ministry creaked open. Martis turned to see Kyrena entering the ministry.
Ah, the lovely witch Kyrena. Parthas, I shall leave you in her hands. My hope is she can aid in reversing the effect of the Ducelin. Take heart, noble Parthas. Help is here.
With that, Martis turned and strode away, leaving the ministry to Kyrena and Parthas. Kyrena gracefully strode up to Parthas' bedside, and as she looked down,
Blessings inherent. Pappy?
Shania cozied up to her huge new companion as they sat on the lounger in her suite.
Blutus like pretty sprites snuggle against him.
Shania like it too. Does Blutus want to touch Shania?
Blutus like touch pretty sprite.
Oh my. He is so gentle.
Shania thought as she enjoyed the attention Blutus was giving her. All throughout their tryst, Shania never felt she was in danger of injury from her huge new friend. In fact, he may well have been the most gentle lover she had ever encountered. She did, however, refrain from using the orgasmanial, since she did not know how much control Blutus might loose under its sway. Their pillow talk was pleasant, and Shania was fascinated by the stories Blutus told her. Nothing amazing, just tales of everyday life in his village. The rock giants, by what she gathered from her chat with Blutus, were perhaps one of the most peaceful, gentle, and loving species in Aeros. Yet when they realized the peril which was about to engulf the land, they fought fiercely to defend it.
Blutus, you are one of the most interesting people I think I have ever met. I've so enjoyed your company, especially learning about your people and how they live. I think you and I will be great friends from here on out. Would that please you?
Blutus much want Shania befriend. Never meet nobody like Shania. Pretty, smart, wise, sweet, strong. Now, Shania tell Blutus about her and her people, and why she have tree painted on pretty sprite's belly.
Shania was happy to oblige her new friend, and told him of life in Boniscus, her travels around Aeros as a diplomatic emissary, and about the belly tree and what it meant. As much as she was enjoying her newfound friend, she knew she needed to rejoin Darkinum and begin planning their next move. She excused herself from Blutus, promising she would see him again. He described how to get to his home, and she vowed to fly over and visit as soon as she could.
Mathila, what the...
Mathila shushed him gently and quietly said,
Please, don't say my real name, Pappy. Denari and I are here incognito. For now, I am Curena, and Denari is Carnata.
Denari is safe too then. I mean, Carnata.
Yes. What our enemies construed to be an unfortunate circumstance for us turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as the result of that circumstance landed us here, which is likely the safest location on the map at this point. That young Noid gentleman in the bed across from you, who is yet to wake, is Cephas, one of the merchants you arranged to transport us to Morganton. He has been healed by the foretold and will awaken soon. But his injury forced us to stop here. News is that Morganton was taken by Minerva and the ogres. Had we proceeded there, we would be their prisoners. Well, Carnata would be their prisoner. Mortebray would have been enforced upon me.
Blessings inherent. Was Carnata injured?
No, and she was amazing under fire. Never lost her composure as she more or less took command. Blessings inherent, but she is truly an amazing woman.
That she is. That she most certainly is.
Curena went on to tell Parthis of all the events that had occurred since she and Carnata fled Harlus, including a description of the one foretold and her abilities. Parthis filled her in on the unfortunate loss of the wayward maid, and just why he was lying in the Ministry of Rejuvenation. Then Parthis went on to say,
But there is a hole in your story now. Since I am here, the reason for your assumed identities no longer holds water with the merchants.
Yes, we must consider our next move carefully. Do we come clean with Rafus and Condon and maintain the facade? Or do we fess up to Shania and Lord Oticum and hope Oticum doesn't throw us in the dungeons? I lean towards the latter myself. I have carried the burden of this piece of knowledge for 2 decades. It would be a huge relief to finally be rid of it.
I agree. After your description of your relationship with this Shania, coupled with the fair and just nature of Oticum, not to mention Shania's personal distaste for Minerva, I think they would be very quick to forgive you your discretion. They would understand.
I think you are right, Pappy. But at the moment I am much more concerned about you. Healing isn't something the Marfo mage lends itself well to, but I will do what incantations I can. But my mage is but a tree imp's fart compared to Shania's. And besides, I am condoled again. A few non-malicious spells can be cast through a condol. Maybe I can provide you some relief. I hate the circumstance, but I am so glad to see you, Pappy. I will go and get Carnata and bring her to visit once I am through with my incantations.
And the tears began to run down Curena's cheeks as she began the incantation for reversing the effects of Ducelin. But whether it was the condol preventing the spell from transmitting, or simply the fact that too much time had passed since Parthis was darted, and the full effect of the poison had long since taken effect, she didn't know. But regardless of exactly why the spells weren't working, the fact that Parthis remained paralyzed had caused the tears Kirana was shedding to turn into full-fledged sobs.
There, sweet witch. Dry those pretty brown eyes. I bet once Shania returns and removes that condol, the two of you will have me dancing the Faust noggin in no time. Just wait, you'll see. I am just too damned ornery to let the actions of a bunch of mindless ogres and that heretic bitch beat me. You'll see, sweetheart.
Oh, Pappy, I should be comforting you, not the other way around. But I do think Shania has the...
But she was interrupted when the door to the ministry swung open, and 2 half-breeds carrying a stretcher came through.
Oh my, I believe that's a gnome maiden they are carrying, Pappy. I wonder what...
But her train of thought was again interrupted when Rantine came through the door behind the stretcher. Kirena ran over to Rantine and looking down saw that it was Tonea that occupied the stretcher. She wrapped Rantine in a tight embrace and kissed her cheek, then kissed Tonea's cheek as well, and asked what had happened. But before Rantine could answer, she noticed Parthis lying in his bed, watching with a concerned look on his face. Tonea was placed in a bed next to Parthis, and Rantine explained what had happened.
Pappy, why didn't you tell me that Ton and Ran were coming?
Well, I wanted to make sure they made it before I gave you and Din. I mean, Carnata's something else to worry about. Carnata doesn't even know that I am here yet.
Tonea could contain herself no longer and interrupted the conversation.
But please, won't someone tell me why Pappy is here?
Parthis himself explained to his beloved little gnome maiden what his situation was. And upon hearing just how serious Parthis's condition was, she became inconsolable and began to have what one might call a conniption. Moaning, sobbing, screaming, and shaking violently. Poor little Tonea was so absorbed in her grief it appeared to be becoming dangerous. Rantine and Kiraina ran to her as Parthis yelled at the attendant.
Get Martis in here, now.
It is Tuesday, the 26th day of the month of Dharme. It is 9 o'clock in the morning. Oddicum and Manish sat across the controvisory table from Nerub and Pontarus, who had returned from Dunbury to brief them on the rulings of the High Court concerning the Minista's involvement in the Witch War. Pleasantries were exchanged, and the meeting proper began. Nerub stood and spoke.
The following are the findings and judgments of the High Court and the Justice Supreme. They are concrete and non-negotiable. Ruling number 1. As was stated in our previous meeting here in the controvisory, the breaking wall has and never will be breached as long as Minista defended. Therefore, we fear no attack from any force assembled in Aeros. The court also feels no need to at this time aid the free peoples of Aeros, as they are seemingly equipped to defend themselves, and as we are self-sufficient, we expect to experience no lack in goods and services for the duration of this conflict. Also citing the superiority of the Minista race to all other races in Aeros, both physically and mentally, any loss experienced by beings outside the breaking wall would cause little grief to the court or the people of the 4 cities. Ruling number 2. If any force of the perceived enemy, or even a force considering itself to be friendly, should approach the breaking wall during this conflict, they shall be dealt with in the harshest manner. From this day until the end of the conflict referred to as the Witch War ends, the 4 cities shall be off limits to any being not of the Minista species, and of course to the heretic Jerone. Ruling number 3. All trade between the 4 cities and the rest of Aeros shall be suspended until further notice, as we are, as stated earlier, self-sufficient. Any merchants who approach the breaking wall during this time will be dealt with in the harshest manner. Ruling number 4. The mixed breed being, known as Shanaea, aka the one foretold, has been deemed a heretic of the most dangerous and evil nature, and if caught by the officers of the High Court shall be immediately imprisoned and executed. These are the rulings of the High Court. They are concrete and non-negotiable.
Oddicum sat for several seconds, glaring at Nerub, his fingernails digging into his palms as the fists he had formed grew tighter and tighter. As the shock Manish had experienced upon hearing the brazenly audacious statement Nerub had made concerning Shanaea quelled, he saw the anger in Oddicum's eyes, and he wondered whether this meeting would turn into a miniature war itself. But Oddicum gathered himself, and he rose and spoke.
Very well. These, then, are the rulings of the Lord Oddicum of the half-breed city of Boniscus. They are concrete and non-negotiable. Ruling 1. You have sat at my table and repeated the bold-faced lie concerning the so-called impenetrable breaking wall on 2 separate occasions thus far, both today and at our previous meeting. How can a creature who claims such high intellectual standing be so stupid as to make the claim that the wall is unbreachable to the very person who breached it successfully and rescued Jerone from your clutches? Furthermore, the unbridled pomposity you display in your claims of superiority over the other species of Aeros, and your dismissal of your need for services outside the wall is no more than a ruse to mask the cowardice of the Minista, which is the true reason for your refusal to aid your fellow species. Your disregard for the other sentient beings inhabiting Aeros proves one thing. Your foolish pride will be the ruin of Minista society, as you will soon discover, my dear magistrate, that you need us much more than we need you. This display of cowardice and indifference on the part of your so-called High Court makes me truly ashamed of the Minista blood which courses through my veins. Ruling number 2. We shall not approach the breaking wall during the Witch War, unless you find yourselves surrounded by Minerva's forces, in which case we will come to your aid in light of the disdain you have shown for our well-being. Why? Because it would be the right thing to do, regardless of how your court feels about the other sentience of Aeros. And finally, ruling number 3. It is the observation of the Lord of Boniscus that the magistrate and his deputy must be out of their fucking minds. The audacity you display in sitting at my table and calmly announcing a death sentence upon my beloved daughter is a testament to the pomposity, arrogance, selfishness, and pure fucking stupidity of your entire race. There is but one full-blooded Manista who possesses any wisdom and common sense whatsoever, and you self-proclaimed giants of intellect have deemed him heretic and placed him under death warrant. I should put you 2 degenerate bastards in my dungeons and slowly skin you alive for the things you have said about Shanaea today, not to mention the insults you have hurled at all the free peoples of Aeros. But I will not. Instead, I will send you back to your high court and its justice supreme with this message. I have breached the laughable defense you referred to as the breaking wall once before. Therefore, I can do it again. Should any harm come to my daughter at the hands of the Manista, I will assemble a force and burn the 4 cities to the ground and then piss on the ashes. I shall smear hyena shit on the walls of the high court as my troops slowly murder your high justices. I shall bring the Manista race to the brink of extinction, or beyond. Harm my daughter, and I shall unleash my vengeance upon you in the harshest manner. These are the rulings of the Lord Oticum of Boniscus. They are concrete and non-negotiable. Now gather your things and remove your self-righteous, cowardly asses from my city before I change my mind and feed your bones to the hogs.
Shanaea and Darkinum sat at the small table in her suite in Pandana, sipping glasses of Sarne and discussing what their next move should be. After seeing the rock giants off, they had returned to the suite, and after Shanaea had filled Darkinum in on her date with Blutus the day before, they determined with very little discussion that they should fly back to Boniscus and confer with Oticum concerning what the next move of the free people should be. They would see Parnell and make preparations to leave for Boniscus this very afternoon. The conversation had hit a lull when Shanaea looked up at Darkinum and said,
Dar, tell me the story of how we first met, please?
Oh, Nea, you have heard that story 1,000 times. You should have it memorized thoroughly by now.
Yes, but something about hearing you tell it puts my heart at ease like nothing else. And right now I need that bit of comfort. Please, Dar?
All right. Why do I have such a problem with telling you no?
Darkinum said with a grin, and then he launched into the narrative his pretty best friend had asked for.
Well, it was 48 years ago. I was but a lad of 8 years, and you were but a toddler sprite of 2. Your mother and Auntie Danine traveled often, usually twice a week or more, to the gnomish cities on errands of diplomacy, commerce, or just pleasure at times. Your mother had arranged with my mother, Katina, and my father, Darvis, to watch you as they conducted their business, which ofttimes took them to dance or Pandana. Father, as chief horticulturist for the 3 cities, was often gone himself, so Mom was usually the one charged with watching you. I absolutely hated you. I suppose I was a bit jealous of the way everyone went on about you. Okay, I was a lot jealous. Oh, isn't she the cutest little thing you ever laid eyes on? Oh, isn't it so cute the way her little wings flutter when she gets excited? Isn't her laugh just so delightful? Doesn't her smile just light up a room? Isn't she just the sweetest little being ever to grace Aeros? Isn't she just blah, 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 blah? It was so tiresome. Mom took me aside once and asked me, Darkinum, why do you avoid poor little Shanaea the way you do? I can tell by the way she looks at you she really wants your attention, but I think she senses your disdain. She wants you to notice her. Why are you so adamant about ignoring her? And I answered, because I have no time to entertain a spoiled little sprite brat. I'm just not interested, and I don't see what is so special about her. Please, Mom, just let it go. Well, things continued on in that manner until one day it finally happened. Dad was away on business, and Mom came to me and said, Son, I have to run an important errand to Dan's, and I will need you to watch Shanaea until I return. It will only be a few hours. I'm sure you can handle it. Needless to say, I wasn't thrilled about it and tried to persuade Mom to find someone else to dump you on, but she claimed she had no time to spare and must leave immediately. I was stuck. Mom left, and I gave you your bladder of Marfo milk and told you to go sit on the floor and drink it and leave me alone. But you looked up at me and said,
Dakina play with Nea?
No, I answered. Go drink your milk and leave me alone like I told you.
But Nea want play. Please play with me, Dakina. Please?
I said no. Now go over there and be quiet. You walked over to the other side of the room with your milk bladder and sat down on the floor. I looked over at you and I could see that you were fighting the urge to cry with all you had. Your lips were formed into that heart-rending pout which you command so skillfully even to this day. You fought as long as you could, and then the tears began to stream down your cheeks. Your little wings began to flutter as the sobs became more pronounced. As I watched you, I began to see what all the others saw in you. You were the cutest little thing I ever laid eyes on. It was cute the way your wings fluttered, but not from excitement this time, but in sorrow. You were the sweetest little being ever to grace Aeros, and I had made you cry. I felt like the most enormous shitheel ever conceived. So I swallowed my pride and went over and sat down in the floor with you and said, "I'm sorry, Nea, of course I'll play with you." Your pretty little mouth formed into a sweet grin and I wiped your tears away. Now your wings were fluttering for a different reason. Mom returned a few hours later and found us sitting in the drawing room floor rolling a ball back and forth, giggling like a gaggle of geese. She looked at me and winked, and then went about her business, leaving us to play and enjoy each other's company. And from that point forward, I was beyond enamored with you. When Renata took you back to Boniscus, I counted the minutes until my little winged buddy returned to me. I took you everywhere I went, all over the town of Don Avarice. Every gnome in the city came to love you, but no one loved you like I did. When you turned 7 years old and your formal education began, Renata convinced Oticum to allow me to be schooled alongside you, and we have been more or less inseparable ever since. There, satisfied?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Dar. I love that story.
As do I, my dear. But now I suppose we should go see Parnell and start arrangements to fly to Boniscus. Shit. Now I have to hate you again. I have told you what an asshole I think you are, have I not?
Yes. I suppose I have to be all the assholes you wish me to be, so I will. Now quit being such a pussy and stop acting like a little girly gnome.
And she reached over and hugged him tightly.